Supported Employment, an Evidence-Based Practice for Persons with Mental Illness. This webinar is facilitated by the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, of Nebraska. My name is Sithara Mathani, and I'm the Community Outreach Associate at NAMI, Nebraska. I am going to be providing a brief introduction before turning the webinar over to our presenters. This webinar is being hosted by Beacon, the Behavioral Health Education Center of Nebraska at Nebraska Medicine. Special thanks to Keith Anderson for helping us with the technology aspect of this webinar. This is the third in a series of 3 webinars designed for people with mental illness and those who walk with them. The series of webinars is part of a larger project on recovery and resiliency that NAMI Nebraska is working on. The project includes newsletters, story videos, webinars, and trainings. Through this project, we seek to educate the public about mental illness and the services available, as well as advocate for the rights of people with mental illness. We hope to fight stigma, honor people's resiliency, and illustrate the recovery as possible. A few notes. Funding for this project is provided by DHHS. The views expressed in this publication do not necessarily reflect the official policies of the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. Mention of trade names, commercial practices, or organizations does not imply endorsement by the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. The webinar will last about an hour. We will be recording the webinar, and a link to the recording will be posted on our website. If you have any questions, type them into the space provided in your control panel, and we will get to them at the end of the webinar. And now I'd like to introduce our presenters, Denise, Cindy, and Michelle. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Sithara. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to talk about a great topic that's near and dear to my heart. And I would like to also introduce Cindy, who is a peer support specialist, and will be sharing a little bit about her story today, and Michelle, who is a life coach. So I get to hear directly from 2 people who have utilized supportive employment and how it's helped them in their success of finding a job and keeping a job. So a little bit about me. My name is Denise Stewart. I'm currently the vocational manager at Community Alliance here in Omaha, Nebraska. I've had the opportunity to be in our vocational program for a little over 10 years now, and have really been inspired each and every day with the individuals that I have the opportunity to work with. So today we're going to share a little bit with you about the model called supportive employment. And this is a model that is promoted and published by a couple different organizations. SAMHSA has a model, as well as the Dartmouth Psychiatric Research Center. They support basic principles that are very similar, but we're going to also speak to some of the randomized control trials and studies that have been done by Dartmouth, so that way we can see the great opportunities that supportive employment can provide. So you might hear me use the term sort of supportive employment, or individual placement and support, which is the IPS model. So if you're doing some research and seeing what's out there on your own, those may be used interchangeably, but they more often than not have the same basic principles. The first random controlled trial was actually published 20 years ago. So happy birthday to supportive employment, I guess. But as you can see, 20 years of research and studying, it is a model that works, which we will talk about a little bit today. And a lot of states do incorporate either the IPS model, supportive employment, into their practices because it has been effective for people with mental illness. I did want to share with you who the other supportive employment providers are in Nebraska. I know we have people from all over the state joining us here today, so wanted to let you know who are some resources close to where you are. So Sierra's House is in Scottsbluff. We have Community Alliance, which, if you hear me say the WorkSource program, That is our vocational program. So I'll apologize ahead of time, but now you know what I'm saying when I say WorkSource. And then Goodwill, Grand Island, Hastings, Kearney, and North Platte are the areas that they provide supportive employment services to. Then we have the Liberty Center up in Norfolk, and then the Mental Health Association, or the HOPE program, is located in Lincoln. So feel free to look them up, and if they're in your area, and see all the great things that they are doing with their supportive employment program. Okay, so now we have our first poll question. What we would like to do is ask you, what percentage of persons with mental illness would you say would like to work or want a job? So is it A, 25%, B, 47%, C, 66%, or D, 75%? So if you could please take a minute and go ahead and vote. I'll give you time to do that. Or you can do eeny, meeny, miny, mo. We'll take another 10 seconds to allow you to vote. Okay. So this is 100% of folks that voted had identified 66% of persons with mental illness are interested in working. Where am I at? Sorry. And actually, the number is 75%. 75% of people with mental illness want to work. And that is based on a study done by Corrigan and Crew, done in 2008. And the surprising part is only 15% of those individuals are currently working. So we're seeing a large group of people who have a desire to want to work, but unfortunately have not been able to work, which is where supportive employment could come in. I wanted to share with you a few years ago, in 2011, we started looking at data as to how many people obtained a job in our Community Alliance WorkSource program, and once they obtained a job, how many of those were able to successfully keep them for at least 90 days. And we had 102 individuals obtain a job in a little over a 1-year period. And 45% of those individuals were able to keep that above and beyond 90 days or 3 months. So what that is showing us is that supportive employment does work, and it helps folks keep a job. And we're going to learn a little bit later as to the positive effects that working can have. So the literature review that's out there, for those of you who enjoy research, I'm a fan of it myself. There are 11 randomized control studies out there for the IPS model, individual placement and support, and all 11 of them identified that supportive employment had significantly better competitive employment outcomes than the control study. So that's a fancy way of saying that supportive employment helps folks find jobs and help them keep jobs. So all of the mean across all of those 11 studies identified that 61% of folks were successful, as opposed to only 23% for the people who were not in supportive employment. So breaking it down a little bit more, they also looked at what significant effect that supportive employment had on finding a job and keeping a job. Unfortunately, the research did not show the pay. That wasn't consistently gathered throughout the studies, so that's the reason for the question marks there. but out of the 11 randomized control studies trials, supportive employment, 43%, almost 44% of individuals in the supportive employment program worked more than 20 hours a week, as opposed to only the 14% in the non-supportive employment. In the days to get a job, it was 4 months and compared to close to 7 months. And then the number of weeks while the study was going on for the folks that were working, 24 weeks they were working consistently. So that's over 6 months, I guess, during the study period, but they could have kept the job above and beyond that. So looking at all of that data, it's, you know, over 2 times the experience, and the results are showing that over 2 times of the people versus the control study versus the supportive employment are working more than 20 hours a week, and they're getting jobs quicker. So having the support of the job coach or the employment training specialist and looking at the different principles of supportive employment, we'll be able to break down kind of how we do that in a step-by-step process. Earlier I talked about the non-vocational effects, perceived effects of working. Becker and Company in 2007, they talked to individuals 8 to 10 years after finding employment through this supportive employment program that they were working with. And I'm sorry, I noticed that these numbers are kind of dark, so sorry if you can't read them. But on the left-hand side, it talks about the area of their life for non-vocational, and then it talks about were there perceived effects in that area, were they worse, were they the same, or were they better? And the first one, talking about relationship with others, 68% of the individuals that they surveyed 8 to 10 years after being in a supportive employment program had identified that their relationship with others were better. Feelings about life and feelings about themselves, again, that is 68% in both of those areas that they were better. Now, of course, some folks felt the same, and there were a percentage that did feel a little worse, but the substantial numbers are in that column of being better. And look at even self-confidence. 68% of individuals felt more confident, you know, whether it's with the work that they're doing or getting a paycheck or just being able to answer the question. You know, if you think about what's one of the first questions you ask a person when you meet them, it's like, hi, my name is Denise. You know, I work at Community Alliance. We ask folks, what do you do for a living? And for a person to say, oh, I have a disability or I'm on disability, if that's how they identify themselves, if once they get a job, then they have a whole new ability to identify themselves and give themselves the ability to say, yes, I work here, here, and here, and helping with that self-confidence. Symptoms, this was incredible. 58% of the individuals that took this survey said that their symptoms were better, and only 16% identified that they were worse. Energy level had improved, 55%. Medication side effects, the majority of the people said that they stayed the same at 61%. So there's a conclusion for these individuals. You know, your side effects are going to happen whether you're at home, on the couch, or if you're going to be at work. So how looking at all those other areas work can affect and improve, that's pretty exciting. And then alcohol use and drug use, 68% had identified that this area was not applicable, and 16% had said that they were the same in this area. And then drug use, 8% had said that it was the same. Those were the only 2 areas that better was not a higher percentage other than medication side effects that which stayed the same. So think about work and all the ripple effect that it has for people, you know, you and me even included, coming home after a day's work, and even though that to-do list maybe only got half done, you know, the pride that we have with a job well done. This shows that people with mental illness experience the same pride in that. So now time for our next poll question. The question is that people need to be symptom-free. This is true or false? People need to be symptom-free before looking for employment. True or false? Give about 5 more seconds to vote. Alrighty, the results are in, and we have a lot of smart people on the other side of this phone. You are correct. That is false. While it may be beneficial for a person to have an awareness of their symptoms and an understanding of how their symptoms impact them each day, by no means does anybody ever need to be symptom-free before starting the employment journey. There can be ways that you could work around managing symptoms while on the job, figuring out job retention strategies, and again, that goes with the principles of supportive employment, which we'll be talking about here shortly. So, way to go, everyone. Now, I did want to spend a quick second talking about a couple models of employment and identifying there's a place and train model that was very common to use, like saying, okay, let's get the person to be ready to go without any hiccups, and saying, let's minimize their symptoms and even get rid of their symptoms prior to helping them look for a job. So that's the train, then place. Let's get them all the skills that they need to know and then help them start looking for a job. But actually, supportive employment, that embraces the place, then trade. So trying to figure out, based on the person's skills, strengths, their work history, who are the supports in their life, what are the coping skills that they can use to manage the symptoms they currently experience, and let's go out and try to connect you with a good job match, and then from there help you manage your anxiety, manage the voices, manage the coworker relations through the support of a job coach or employment training specialist. So now we'd like to actually dig in and talk a little bit more on the nuts and bolts about what supportive employment looks like, and actually the principles of supportive employment. So the first and foremost that I am glad that the #1 principle of supportive employment is that zero exclusion criteria. Anyone that says, I'm interested in working, yes, I want to get a job, it's important to me, I'm ready to go, it's a zero exclusion criteria. Once someone says, hey, I'm interested, we work with them to try to figure out how to make it happen. Where have they worked before? What have they done? How do they find enjoyment? Maybe it's someone who enjoys playing video games quite a bit. Well, there's lots of opportunities out there, maybe at game stores or electronic stores. There's those transferable skills. Again, going back to that place, then train model. Let's get the job coach to help them learn the job while they're there and adjust accordingly while they're working. Client preferences are important. That's the second principle of supportive employment. This is where we try to play detective and help the person think about, okay, what would be your dream job? What do you want to be when you grow up? If you were to have any job, what would it be? What would you be doing? How would you like to spend 4 hours of your day, 6 hours of your day, 8 hours of your day? So basing our interactions and our job search on what they identify during that conversation. Are you interested in working part-time, full-time? Do you want to work alone? Are you better in a team environment? How are you with outside work versus inside in a climate-controlled environment? So really just playing detective, and the person may have no idea. I don't know, I just know I want a job. I need more money in my pocket. Okay, well, let's start kind of peeling back the onion and playing detective and say, what would bring you happiness? How can we turn maybe a hobby that you enjoy doing into something you can get paid to do? So those are some key questions that we ask to try to get to the person's preferences. The third principle, which sometimes scares a lot of people to not work, is benefits. Social Security benefits, maybe the SNAP benefits, maybe housing benefits. People get fearful that they may lose some of those benefits should they go back to work. And actually that is, a very legitimate fear, in the sense of if someone was on waiting 2 to 3 years to get approved for Social Security, it's very scary to think about going to work and possibly losing that. The reality is a person can work and still keep their eligible for Social Security benefits. And there are great resources available in the state of Nebraska to help learn about those. Easter Seals has a work choice program. It used to be called WIPA, W-I-P-A, which is the Work Incentives Planning and Assistance Program. So that can be found at, I'm sorry I don't have it on the slide here, but that can be found at Nebraska, spelled out, tickettowork.com. Maybe we can post it when we on the NAMI website, that, or I can type it in when we get done here today too, so you can have that. But that is a great place to start, so you could get some questions answered before you move forward with finding employment or helping your loved one find employment. Because people can work and still be approved for Social Security benefits. Now, a lot of supportive employment programs provide that education and support with reporting those benefits and answering questions during that supportive employment process. So there are resources out there for people to successfully go back to work, and if they want to or need to keep their benefits, can do that. There was a person that we had the privilege of working with. He was started part-time, and he was very, very nervous and anxious about going back to work. It had been about 7 years since he had worked at all. And the last time he was at work, he had actually experienced symptoms. So every time he thought about going to work, he would remember, the last time I worked, I had symptoms. And it was very hard for him to think about, if I work, these symptoms are going to come back as bad as they were back then. So we kind of talked with him, met with him, identified what was important to him about working, developed that plan, educated him about benefits, identified, yes, I can work. He was about 23 hours a week, and then was able to keep his benefits as well. And then from there, so stayed at that job for about a year. and then symptoms, he found the right medication, had good supports in his life, and then from there decided to look for a full-time job. So again, received supports from our program. We helped him find a different full-time job and has successfully been able to stay off benefits for 3 years now. So, but there are folks that stay working part-time and keep those Social Security benefits. And then there are folks that, if symptoms come up again, there is a program called Expedited Reinstatement to possibly get back on benefits should a person go off them. So there are lots of resources out there. I'm just giving you a small little nuggets of it. I'm glad to answer questions and point you in any direction I can, because I am not the expert by any means, but I can get you connected to people that are. So the next one talks about the focus on competitive employment. That's what we do. We help folks get back out in the community and get competitive jobs, not necessarily created for people with disabilities. We are out at all the locations getting competitive employment. The next principle for supportive employment is rapid job search. Now, our goal is to help people get in front of an employer within 30 days. And that could be as simple as going to a job fair or maybe doing an informational interview. If, you know, Best Buy looks like a great place to work, maybe we'll go and meet with HR, or meet with one of the employees there to see what they like about the job, what don't they like about the job. Just to have them make an informed choice and get educated before they move forward with working. And then we, as employment specialists or job coach, we are responsible for building relationships with employers. We go out to employers, we figure out what their needs are, what's the position that maybe has a high turnover rate, and how could we possibly be the solution to that. You know, our program, we have over 130 people in our program currently. And so that is a wealth of potential employees for employers that are having a hard time find excellent employees. And we have 130 people that are ready to work. So they're in various stages. Obviously, some are working and some are still looking, but that could spark some employers' interest. And building that relationship, and it's not about just plugging a person in a job. It's, again, very much finding that good job match based on one of the previous principles about their preferences. The next principle talks about follow-along supports are continuous. So we have kind of, it takes a village approach to employment. We coordinate with whoever is the individual's cheerleaders. We talk to their mental health providers. We do what we can just to make sure everybody is moving the right direction to help this person remain successful. Because if everybody's on the same page and those supports continue, then you have that consistency for the person as well when things maybe aren't going well on the job. And then the last one, last principle, supportive employment services and mental health services are integrated. It's not an either or. It's, like I had said, we communicate with the mental health provider, the therapist, whomever is on their mental health team to help them, the individual, stay well and to be successful. We communicate that together. And maybe they're working with a therapist on how to communicate maybe more effectively because it's hard for them. They're either fearful to share their concerns due to past experiences. So the job coach would do some role playing, figure out what the therapist is suggesting for ideas, and then the job coach would reinforce those by reminding the individual either on the job or off the job to implement some of those skills. Sorry about that. So that is an overview of the 8 principles for supportive employment. And just to share a little bit more, this is talks about the details of how Community Alliance, what services we specifically provide, and how we help the person not only get a job, but how do we help them keep the job as well. So we partner with vocational rehabilitation and the Division of Behavioral Health to provide that comprehensive approach. It's a 3-step process, and step 1 is done with vocational rehabilitation. They do an excellent job of benefits orientation. They also help the person if they say, oh, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I've tried lots of different things and I haven't quite decided yet. They can do some career assessments and help the person identify, okay, maybe here's your top 1 or 2 areas based on your skill level and your interest in different assessments that they provide the person. They also gather the work history and just kind of help get them moving forward with their journey, saying, yes, here's maybe I am interested in sales, or I am interested in working production based on what we've talked about. So once that's done, then they let Community Alliance know in the WorkSource program. They say, hey, the person is ready to start looking for a job. We kind of gathered some things together. So then the job coach starts working with them at least on a weekly basis, and we get to start getting to the more detail of actually looking for work. Maybe it's interview techniques. Maybe we either need to develop a full resume with the person, as we know a lot of jobs are online these days. So gone are the days where you can knock on the door and talk to the HR person to apply for a job. So even navigating the computer, and I don't know if anybody has gotten that circle of doom on their computer when trying to apply for a job, but it's just that circle that goes and goes and goes, and it says it's thinking, and 20 minutes later it's still thinking. That can be very frustrating, and so how to help someone work through that. And then once a job is obtained, we provide that support. We can do it either on-site or off-site. There's a number of employers that we've worked with here in the Omaha area that have allowed us, and the person wanted us on-site because either their productivity, maybe their speed, they had difficulty with that. So we can be there, assess what the job looks like, and maybe give them some tips. There's a company that we were working with and processing shoes, and there would be about 500 shoes a day that a person had to look at, tag if they were over a certain dollar amount, put stickers in, fold it back up so it looks really nice when the customer opens that initial box, and put them away. So when helping the person with that, he was actually taking both shoes out of the box, kind of had like 2 or 3 steps that we were able to cut out that very much increased his speed, and he was able to get to meet productivity. And that was able to do by the job coach being there and kind of helping him work through kind of those stinking thinking thoughts that were going through his head, and provide him that cheerleading and encouragement. So those are things that we can coordinate with the employer as well. Human resources, maybe it's about a medication. Someone feels really groggy in the morning, so instead of starting at 8, maybe they can start at 9 or 10, and we can adjust kind of that schedule accordingly and advocate. Help give people a voice and teach them how to continue that voice. We also are behind the scenes. If a person says, no, I'd prefer, the employer doesn't know that I'm involved in this vocational program, We've met people before work, after work, on their lunch schedule, the next door at a restaurant that they're grabbing lunch at, and just kind of processing how the day went. What went well, what didn't go well, what do you want to do differently tomorrow? What can we talk through so you do go back to work tomorrow if it was just a frustrating day and too overwhelming. And so helping folks have that hope and getting through, because one individual we were working with, he's a former Marine, I believe, and it had been about 5 years since he worked, and he had done kind of janitorial construction in the past, and he was like, oh yeah, I could just step right into a job doing cleaning, no problem at all. Well, he felt really sore and tired after a 4-hour shift of cleaning, being back on his feet. So the job coach kind of helped him think back to his boot camp days and how when things got really tough at boot camp, how did you get through and what did you do? And we are 4 months into the job, he's 35 pounds lighter, and he's going to work and kicking butt. So he's doing a very good job. But he had not been able to, the job coach provided kind of that cheerleading and the support and giving him the hope that this too will pass. This too will pass. So, and then also that's kind of the resiliency of getting through work, and also finding that work-life integration of how do I handle everything that's been my responsibility up to this point and work too. That's just a lot too. Now I'm working a 4-hour day, 6-hour day. How do I incorporate my doctor's appointments and my therapy appointments and I got to pick up my medications. I still got to take care of my kids. So how to make it be possible. So that's just a little snapshot into Community Alliance and the services that we provide. So now I would like to invite Cindy and Michelle to share a little bit about their journey through employment. And I created a few questions for them, and I guess we'll just take turns. Does that work, ladies? And then we can go on to the next question. So the first question is, how did you learn about WorkSource and the Supportive Employment Program at Community Alliance? Cindy, you want to go first?
Sure. I had been involved in the day rehab program for a couple of months, and so was connected to Community Alliance. And then I had a desire to take the next step into my recovery and decided that it was time for me to go back to work. And I learned about the WorkSource program and how they could assist me with employment. So I made that decision, and I was able to get connected with vocational rehab first, and then was transferred to the WorkSource program. And my psychiatrist really started the whole process in the very first place, because my psychiatrist was the one that directed me actually to Community Alliance. So that was the very first process.
Okay. So thank you. Michelle?
Initially, I was seeing a therapist or a counselor, and she was the one that directed me to the vocational rehab. And after I went through the assessments with vocational rehab, they moved me on to the Community Alliance in order to find a position.
Okay. So they shared a little bit about what Community Alliance was, or is that when Tammy had come out? Oh,
yes.
Good. Good. Well, thank you. So the next question, Cindy, we'll start with you again. So what challenges did you come across during your employment process, and how did you get through them?
Well, as you referred to before about benefits, that was my main concern, because I was on Medicaid and Social Security at the time, and so I had to be very careful of those benefits when starting to work. And so vocational rehab assisted me in that process initially by having me work with the benefits specialist. And I was in constant contact with the benefits specialist throughout my employment, and then also with the assistance of my job coach from WorkSource. She helped me navigate any issues that I had regarding my benefits. And the other issue probably that I faced was really finding a job that was suitable for my stress level and that would allow me to work shorter hours per day. And I remember working at a call center first when returning back to work. And even though I was working shorter hours, probably during the day, I hated it. And
Not a good job.
it was, yeah, it was rather stressful. So with the support and continued efforts of my job coach, then we were able to find a job at a local grocery store that allowed me to work the 4 to 5 hours shifts and with the correct amount of hours that would fit into my benefits. So
Great.
yeah.
Yeah, I can understand benefits is very scary.
Yeah,
Very
it was
scary.
very important.
I'm glad you got the support that you needed to make those decisions. Michelle, share your challenges with us?
I had many challenges and continue to have challenges, and that's part of what life is about, is the challenge. And I kind of had written down a few of them. I believe I started working with Tammy in January of a year ago. And we had an informational meeting with someone at Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And it was that following later that week, I was served with divorce papers. So that was one of the first challenges that I encountered. Then it was trying to figure out the whole process of the legal system and finding a lawyer to deal with that, filling out all of that paperwork and the stress that came with that. And then finally, the surgeries that I had. In July, I was having back issues previous to that, and I had actually shoulder surgery in July. So I had the shoulder surgery and then called Tammy a day in August, and I had water in my basement.
Oh, no.
Had to deal with that. The next night, my father's taken into the hospital, and neurologist believes he has Huntington's chorea, so it's dealing with figuring out that. And the deaths, I had 3 deaths since I've known Tammy, deaths in the family, and she's helped me through each one of those and trying to be positive and maintain my course. Another surgery early in September for my back. I had a discectomy, and that re-herniated in October of last year. Then I had an emergency spinal fusion. So I've mostly been healing and in recovery that way, but always thinking of applying and being ready for a job. I now have been released for that, and am still eagerly looking. I do have a position at the YMCA as a diabetes prevention program coordinator, lifestyle coach. Still looking for the full-time employment, but I'm taking steps.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, when we talk about how do we get through them, one of the things that I did was to try to work with and find the balance. So do a little bit of what needs to be done, has to be done, and then step back and take care of myself.
Okay.
Very, very important.
Very good.
What I remember to do is to eat, move, think, and sleep.
Eat, move, think, and sleep.
EMCS.
Okay.
So
that's great.
Eat well. The fruits and vegetables are very important. I find if I go off of that, then I have a more challenging time.
Okay.
Moving is to get the exercise.
Okay.
Exercise, helps boost those positive brain chemicals, so that's very important to me in my health. Think, you talked about the think and thinking.
Yeah.
Trying to focus on the positive. I can really easily drop down in that hole and wallow in that hole, and as my counselor had pointed out to me one time, she had a child that she was working with, and the child came up with this thought that sticks to me every time I'm thinking about wallowing. And it's like, he says, well, how long do you want to camp out here? So whenever I get into that position, I sit and think, how long do I want to camp out here? Because there's a lot I could camp out about, but it's making that choice to move forward and to think positively.
That's great.
And then the sleep portion is, I have to get a 7-hour sleep.
Okay.
I have to.
Yep. You know that's what you need to be able to.
That's what I need. And when I lack in those areas, plus monitor my medications.
Okay.
But when I lack in those areas, then I also have more challenges in my life in dealing with them, especially.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So in what ways is or was the supportive employment program or the WorkSource program helpful in your desire to find a job or keep a job? If you just want to focus on one area, that's fine. If you want to speak to both, that would be fine as well.
Well, having a job coach right alongside you and who is willing to assist in whatever needs or desires I had with employment, I found was really motivating and encouraging in and of itself. And knowing that I had someone who could advocate for me and my needs provided that good feeling and actually helped with the desire to pursue the efforts and sticking with it. And my job coach was willing to participate in my employment however I needed and felt like was important. However I was comfortable with her, such as helping me with my hours and shifts. I really didn't need any help on the job site, but I didn't have a problem with her participating at the job site, you know, just being there. You know, WorkSource was and still is a great program for anyone that has a desire to move forward, you know, in their recovery and has the desire to return to work because they're willing to stand right by you and walk with you every step of the way from the beginning to the end.
Thanks, Cindy.
So
yeah, great. Thank you. Michelle?
I would have to agree completely with you. Everything that you said is exactly what I would say. My notes include that she helps me keep my focus and keep my eye on the goals that we're looking forward to.
Okay.
She gives me reminders and what my coping skills are if I ever falter. So she's there as a support and encouragement. Her positivity and encouragement. It's easy to fall off of that cliff, and she's always there to lift me up and bring me back. She's found several jobs for me to apply for, so looking for those additional positions that I've missed when looking through the different resources for employment.
Have you guys kind of talked through kind of the benefits of whether to apply or not apply?
Yes,
okay.
We definitely have, and in weighing those decisions on what works for me, because there's there was a position that she found that I was like, you know, I don't think that really fits with me. But then after I thought about it for a couple of days, I thought, you know what? That actually does pretty much fit with me. This would be a nice, you know, one of my skills, I have with the Strength Finders, I have the top 5 skills of achiever, empathy, individualization, input, and learner.
Okay.
And it was with a mortuary.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, like empathy works really well
I mean,
with that.
Yeah.
It really, and so I did apply.
Did you?
And while I didn't get the position, it was getting out of the box and trying something new and being open to it.
That's great.
So, let's see. She's provided me with additional resources that I didn't know were out in the community.
Okay.
I did take a work technology class.
Oh, really?
And that was one that she found, and I was able to take, and it was a part of a grant program. So there was no fee or charge to me for that. she got me involved with the Omaha Career Network Working Group. Again, it's all my choice at this point. So she gives me the resources, talks about it, and then I get to make the decision. And I've been working with that group, and they have a 12-week careers transition workshop going on now on Tuesday nights from, I think it's 7 to 8:30. And I've learned a lot from it. It's a great resource, and I encourage anybody in the Omaha area to go to it.
Great.
She's kept in touch with my mental health providers, kept on those fronts, has made contact with them, and if there was a point where she was like, okay, I'm having a little bit hard time dealing with Michelle as far as how can I support her more when she's in the low parts. And so she contacted my my counselor and discussed it with her, and it definitely helped.
Has it helped?
Yeah,
Good.
not that it was a huge problem on my side. It was just her initiative.
So it looks like
so.
a booster.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
She's helped me with creating a resume, discussing applications and what to write on them, cover letters. At one point, my vehicle quit, and I needed to have it serviced. She drove me, so I could get it serviced, and so that was
Great.
nice. And the accountability and even the friendship. Yeah, all wonderful things.
Good.
Great.
The accountability is a big factor. That's a big factor.
Have someone kind of seeing how things are going and how progress is going, and
Yeah.
someone who's asking you, so how many jobs did you look at or find
Yeah.
or see this week? Okay. Well, good. So we have about 10 minutes left, so we wanted to make sure you guys had time for the next two questions for folks that are listening out there. I'd like to know what advice for folks that are thinking about going to work. If you were to give them some advice, what would it be, Cindy?
Well, I'm going to keep it short, but the first piece that I would say is to talk to your support systems and see how they feel about your readiness to return to work. And then assess yourself in regards to your reasons for returning to work, and looking at your possible job interests, and really take an honest look at yourself and consider your job readiness and the readiness to make a change and take steps towards change. And as Michelle said, step out of the box, because there's so many steps in moving forward to get a job and to keep the job, and it is generally not a short process. It generally takes quite a while, and it's really important for you to know that it's not going to happen overnight.
So having not only patience in the process, but maybe having patience with themselves, and figuring out a way it is okay to just keep moving forward.
Yeah, and look at yourself to make sure that you're going to be looking for a job that's going to be your best fit, and not take the first job just because you want the money.
Okay. Okay.
Because that's really important to consider.
Okay. Thank you. Good advice. Michelle, what's your advice for folks out there?
I would wholeheartedly agree with that as well. I think one of the biggest things is to know yourself. Know what you're capable of at this point, whether that's part-time work, how many hours, full-time work, how many hours, what your ability to tolerate is, what your passions are, to actually spend the time to do the research and know what you like, even to your body's own rhythms. Are you a morning person, an afternoon person, an evening person, to really do that discovery process before you make those steps. So that would be probably my biggest advice, is to really dig down deep and kind of look at those different facets of, what are you expecting, or what do you want?
Great. Thank you. All right, so those folks that are out there listening, the family members and the support groups that are out there soaking in everything we're saying. What advice would you have for them to better support people who are wanting to go back to work?
Having worked and been a part of WorkSource, this is a dear part to me. I really want the families and support systems to know that the return to work is a process, and it's not easy, and it does take time. But WorkSource is there every step of the way to help out, and it's important for the families to remember that the goal is to find the best fitting job for their individual and to be a success, and not take the first job just to get that money, and that the individual usually knows what is best for them, what's going to be the best fit, what they can do for the time being, and to allow that individual to have the freedom to look into a variety of jobs and support the work that the individual is doing with the job coach, because that can minimize the stress and pressure on their loved one immensely. I see in my work, I see a lot of individuals come through WorkSource that do feel stress and pressure from families or their support systems just to go out and get a job. And it's very difficult to see that happen, and I know from my own personal experience as well. And
so making sure everybody's on the same page.
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, I really think it's important for the families and support systems to know that WorkSource is working with the individual, and that the individual knows, you know, that they'll get a job, and we want them to be a success.
Okay, wonderful. So we have a few minutes left. Michelle, what advice do you have?
I would have to say that in my particular position, I didn't really have family members around or support system. My support system has been my job coach, Tammy. However, I do have some contact with my daughter, and she was concerned as to why I wasn't immediately finding and working full-time, a 40-hour work week. For the last 28 years, I've been a stay-at-home mom, and occasionally worked a casual position here, here and there in some hours, but probably for the last 14 and a half years since my son was born, I was dealing with family issues and things coming down that way. So it was more of a, she really needed to know, and it didn't matter if I told her, that it was a readiness factor. I was so overwhelmed, and it was a readiness factor, and that it's really important to allow them to go at the pace they need to go at.
Great.
Very important for that. There was just no way. It's just, similar to someone who's been asked, for smoking cessation, or to take that into account, because I believe, and I strongly believe this, and I just recently spoken to my counselor about it. Had I been pushed into doing this a couple of years ago, it would have been a crash and burn scene. Crash and burn. So it's really taking one step at a time and becoming stable after you take that step, and then looking forward, never looking back. You always look forward, and what's this next step I can take? And it's not a race. It's not a race. It's but at the same time, if you want to have that movement going forward, one step at a time, and then creating that stability, and then taking that next step.
Great. Thank you. So one last poll question as we're getting ready to come to a close here. So of the clients, let me pull it down real quick. Oh, I never shared the last one. Sorry. There's the results of the last ones. So the question is, when clients are enrolled in supportive employment, which characteristics is associated with positive employment outcomes? Meaning, if a person does this, then they're more likely to get a job and keep a job. What would you say would be the best indicator that a person will be successful in getting a job? So A is psychiatric symptoms, B, substance use, C, education, D, work history, or E, prior hospitalization. 5 more seconds and we'll close the poll. All right, we'll close the poll. So here's the results. We have 50% that said psychiatric symptoms and 50% that said work history. So, and actually D, work history, is what, if someone has somewhat of a work history, they are more applicable to be successful in getting a job in the future. So just to be respectful of everyone's time, I know we're closing up here. Here's just a few things that will help lead to an employment success. Be sure to ask questions. What resources are out there? Like Michelle had said, there are an abundance that maybe we can help you get tapped into. Talking about work. Let's not have that be a scary 4-letter word. Let's talk about what could work look like. If you envision it, first you think it, then you say it, and then you do it. So getting that forward motion. And recognizing little successes and how to make those good informed decisions and learn who's your cheerleaders. And be an active participant into developing that plan. And that helps to foster potential work references. Talk to everybody you know. If you're thinking about working, talk to your neighbor, talk to the person at the gas station that you go to, talk to the grocery store clerk, people at church, neighbors. Just talk to everyone you know that you're interested in working. So thank you all for your time. If you'd like, we can take questions now if there are any. No, it doesn't look like there are any. So if there are no questions, I will turn it back over to Satara.
Thank you, Denise, Cindy, and Michelle, for sharing your expertise and experiences with us today. And thank you to everyone who attended today's webinar. I'm just going to flip forward a few slides. Oh, there's the results of the poll. Hi.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And then let's see. So if you have any questions, please call us at one of the numbers listed on the slide. And a link to a recording of this webinar will soon be posted on our website, naminebraska.org. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your day.